Day 176 of the Ukrainian war map, also known as Russia's aggression towards Ukraine. Juzzy here, and today is just another quick update as I take a more simplified and down-to-earth approach of the happenings on the ground there in Ukraine. Now, as always, I like to start off with the military losses on the Russian side. I'd like to take this moment again to advise a couple of things. These are just approximate estimates based on the Ukrainian ground forces' reported confrontations. It's not designed for me to compare with the Ukrainian losses, but it is instead designed to show the significant wearing thin of Russian forces instead there. Now, as we can see, the military personnel losses start at 44,300 as reported in the last 24-hour period there. Noteworthy military hardware losses include 3 Russian tank losses, which is quite big or quite considerable and significant, even if it's just a few per day. Tanks are quite hard to replace there, obviously. And a mouthwatering 17 artillery and 7 vehicles. Now we'll move across to the map. Again, we start outside of Ukraine, so this is happening more and more. No shortage of news outside of Ukraine at the moment, and the first one is in Belgorod, where Ukraine took out a communications tower yesterday. You probably already heard this news there. It was widely reported that this was a loitering munition, like the US supplied Switchblade drones or the Switch drones there, but this is unlikely, and it appears to have been something much more sinister than that. Much more of a high-end Ukraine capability, like a clandestine Ukrainian force on the ground or a high-range missile attack. But more information surely to follow on that one soon enough. Now, we start out in Ukraine at the Sumy region here, where Russian forces carried out 15 attacks on the region overnight. No casualties were reported, but a school, a cultural center, and several residences in the area were damaged. We move across down to the Kharkiv district, or oblast really there, where Russian forces launched rockets overnight. No casualties reported. Russia is not making much in the way of physical gains in this region there, but Russia's significant intensification of attacks in the Kharkiv region seem to be indicative of their anger at not making much new ground there. But of course, the continued quote-unquote Russian liberation of some residential buildings occurred there as well. In the Donbass region, so we'll move down just a smidge there, where Russian forces continue to concentrate their efforts in this region, particularly in the town of Bakhmut, as we can see right there. Having said that, the Ukrainian General Staff said Ukrainian forces repelled a Russian offensive near Pavlivka. So if we just scroll down a bit right here, so this chunk of change over here. Also, a Russian munitions depot or dump was reportedly hit in the Amrovivka or Amrovivka, I should say, city, and I've just highlighted that one there, and we've got the video, of course, there too. Not a great deal of information. It's always a little bit harder to get further information in a Russian occupied district or region there, but it is what it is. And then, of course, we move across to the Zaporizhzhia region. Now, maybe just a little bit more information on Zaporizhzhia. So Zaporizhzhia Oblast contains both the city of Zaporizhzhia there and Melitopol, which is in Russian-occupied territory. And on that subject there, explosions were reported in a Russian-occupied resort in the Zaporizhzhia Oblast. Now, according to the Melitopol city mayor, Russia pulled military equipment out of Melitopol to a town along the Sea of Azov. So the Sea of Azov is here, which effectively connects to the much larger Black Sea there. Now, Russia pulled out this stuff from this equipment, military equipment, from Melitopol to the Sea of Azov town, fearing a strike by Ukrainian forces. Now, what this means is that Russian forces are getting scared of further ammo depot attacks. So many have occurred at this point. So their forces are required to pull their ammo depots further and further back from the Russian front line, which in turn means Russia's supply and logistic capabilities to support their own frontline offensive are getting incredibly hampered. Russia keeps having to learn this the hard way. Of course, you might remember, so this little ship here, just like when Ukraine took out Russia's $170 million or USD Russian Moskva cruiser ship back in April, right at this location, it was just too close to Ukrainian strike capabilities, which are only getting better and better every month. So a very hard lesson that Russia continues to learn. More information about the Zaporizhzhia region. So Ukraine actually destroyed 3 Russian unmanned aircraft in this region here. So the Zaporizhzhia Oblast. Just zoom in there a bit more correctly. Ukraine Air Forces also destroyed another Russian Ka-52 Alligator all-weather attack helicopter as well. So that's always nice to see there too in that location. Now we'll move across to Kherson. Always a lot happening here in very particular spots too. So a Russian ammunition depot and a base and a rail link in this spot there, so the Novokhovka area right next to the bridge there, was hit by Ukrainians a short time ago again. Now this is repeatedly happening. Ukraine keeps taking out some of the infrastructure, the depots, the bases there, and it continues to infuriate the Russian offensive on the North Bank. So if I'm to zoom out here, this supply line, pretty much the only supply line really, to be honest, that can supply the whole Russian-occupied North Bank here, as it wants to push into the rest of Kherson and into the Mykolaiv region there as well. But what's happening is Russia just cannot supply their frontliners right there. That's why no gains are really being made. In fact, I've mentioned it in another previous video, and it's all around the internet there, but Russian commanders have actually been pulling themselves back from the front line, the front Kherson line, just to leave their infantry, their grunts, sometimes known as orcs, to really fend for themselves. So Russia's not doing too great there. Now, of course, we move down to Crimea. Russia pulls military aircraft out of Crimean air bases recently after recent explosions in the peninsula. There was probably at least 3 explosions in the last 2 weeks confirmed. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense reported that no less than 24 planes and 14 choppers had to be transferred out of the airfields in Crimea. The withdrawal comes after large explosions in a number of regions there, so airfields, depots in the peninsula, to the left, the center, and the upper right there. So yeah, there's not a lot of confidence for Russians in the Crimea region at the moment. Now in the news, so let's see. Russia tries to recruit mercenaries from Central Asia. So Russia is conducting a recruitment campaign targeting citizens of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, according to Ukraine's military intelligence. The Defense Ministry's main intelligence directorate also said that discontent is growing in Chechnya because locals are being forced to join Russian troops in Ukraine under the threat of criminal prosecution and or torture. So that's not the way for any country to increase morale amongst its troops, forcing them. A little bit of news out of Australia, so that's pretty cool, right? You might have noticed my accent. So Australia cancels approval for a new Russian embassy building. Australia said it was specifically to do with a missed construction deadline, though they did say that the full-scale invasion of Ukraine from Russia didn't help Russia's case. So it's not, at least a little bit nice that Australia was being a little bit honest about some of the reasons there too. In other words, this is an example of another country standing up in solidarity against Russia's aggression in Ukraine. A little bit more news. So 4 cargo ships, grain ships, depart the Black Sea ports of Odessa, down there, and Chernomorsk, right there too. So that's always good to see, a steady outgoing supply there at this point for really international food security needs, as they say. Now, in other news, in another location, so Denmark, maybe I have to pull up a different map at this point here, but Denmark, quite away from the front line, is ready to limit entry of Russian tourists, regardless of an upcoming EU decision on the matter. So that's nice of them there as well, I guess standing up on the NATO side of things. Now, a little bit more news for Crimea there, the Crimean Peninsula. So President Zelensky of Ukraine warns residents of Crimea and other occupied territories not to approach Russian military infrastructure. Now, this is making reference to Ukraine's relatively newly available high-precision strike capabilities via the use of weapons like the HIMARS systems and other systems, and I believe other high-end systems from NATO that have not yet been disclosed. So that's interesting there in my fields. More Ukrainian news. So from a US think tank called the ISW, which says Russian forces are likely losing confidence in the security of Crimea. But it doesn't really take a think tank group at this point to point or figure that one out. Okay, well, that's pretty much it, but I guess I'll round it off with a bit of a funny today. So a bit of an image meme which shows new attire for priests proposed in Russia. Now, this meme is a comment on Russian military losses being quite significant. Combine that with the fact that priests are probably the last people on Earth to enter a war battle arena, making for just a small pinch of a laugh there. So thanks again for watching, guys. Please leave a comment, subscribe, hit that like button, show all of those trolls out there who's who and what's what, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.